Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live. We got a great special show. We are on the verge of celebrating Thanksgiving if you're in the United States. Will, what do you got going on for Thanksgiving? Any plans?
So I know you're a Vikings fan. So I also know you guys are doing okay this year, and a football fan. So in my little neck of the woods in Columbus, Ohio, the big thing is we're hosting Michigan, the Ohio State Michigan game this weekend. Should be a really exciting game. It's always a big deal. I went to Ohio State, so obviously which side I'm rooting for. But I also know we got a lot of Michigan fans in our audience, so just it's gonna be a great game.
Yeah, that's when like an extra million people descend upon your neck of the woods, right?
You know what's funny? Just real quick side note. It's the reason I came to Ohio from Connecticut and into Ohio State, because a friend of mine 30 years ago was like, hey, you need to come to an Ohio State Michigan game. I had no context for why this game was important. I showed up. There was 1 million people at the game, and it was like Mardi Gras. I was like, this is what your school is like? He's like, oh, yeah, all the time. And it's like I transferred and been there kind of ever since.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. That was part of the program you didn't pay for. You are here because every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do this live show. Tuesdays, we're doing pitch deck reviews. Got something real special planned. I have here with us my main man, Will Schroeder. I am Ed Kang. If you haven't met me, most people know, probably the most obnoxious guy in our community all over the place. Chief Strategy Officer, that's me. Will is the CEO founder. He's also known as our pitch deck doctor. He's a resident pitch deck guru and 9-time founder, 5 exits. That's for you, Will. Helped raise close to $1 billion for startups back in your day. That's what you've done. So you're here to help us, and we're going to just be blasting you with a bunch of questions in terms of helping out this pitch deck.
And for those of you that don't know Ed, the both of you that don't know Ed, I got to tell you, he is our most in-demand strategist. Everybody's trying to get on his calendar. Everybody's trying to talk to him about what they're doing. And it's amazing to watch because Ed and I give our own versions of advice to founders all day long. And sometimes we don't agree, right? Sometimes we'll give different versions. And I tell people the same thing every time. I'm like, the goal here isn't to get one type of advice, right? The goal is to get many types of advice. I love it, Ed, when you don't agree with me, because you've got this amazing background coming as a GP of a VC, and you see things way differently. I've never been an investor. All I've ever been is a founder. So I love when people get the different narratives, and they'll see some of that today.
And that's the best part, Will, is that you'll bring that to me and we'll talk about it. And, we'll learn, both of us. Like I've learned so much, and say, hey, this is my perspective. And then we give a holistic view to all the founders. And that's what we're here for. And before we jump in, just want to say this show is brought to you by us here at Startups.com. If you haven't checked us out yet, you're hanging out with us on the interwebs. We are here. Check out Startups.com. We got all these videos that we can go see, and then we answer all your questions, a lot of free resources that you can take advantage of even before. And we ask you to consider becoming a member. Join our, what we call the Forever Accelerator, because we want to be with you and help accelerate your success forever. That's who we are. Will, what's your invitation for everybody thinking about Startups.com?
Hey, given the timing, I know not everybody will see this, but we're actually doing a huge promo for Black Friday. So if you guys hop on the site by this time tomorrow, we're going to give away lifetime access to the site. So if you get a chance, come visit us.
That is fantastic. All right. So for everybody who's joining us in the audience, get ready. At any point in time, you can use the Q&A box or chat to ask questions. Just put it in there. We have our wonderful Jen. She is lurking in the background to administrate the chat. Please follow the instructions and ask us. You can derail, abscond, you can distract, divert us with all your questions. We are here to answer them. We're going to make them priority. But like I said, in this episode here, we're going to go through a pitch deck. And one of the things, Will, that I'm going to set up for you, we're going to talk, because I want to add this, because I think it's a great discussion, is we're going to do a pitch deck review, but I'm going to ask you, does it unicorn?
And I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's kind of like a facetious way, but let's talk about the potential and how this could go to market and help our founders here understand how investors that invest in startups, professional, institutional capital, how they might be thinking, because that's the first thing that crossed through their mind. Because if I'm investing in startups, I need something to go unicorn. What about you?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, everyone's got, you talk to enough investors, everyone's got an opinion. And we certainly have them too. One of the interesting things, though, about the advice that we give on this channel and kind of what we do at Startups.com is we're not just giving you our own advice. Like Ed and I have a tremendous amount of years on the stick, so to speak, doing this. I've got over 30 years. Ed, you're in the same ballpark. And yes, we have a lot of experience, but what's more important about our perspective, our experience, isn't our experience, it's everybody else's. We have the advantage of talking to thousands of founders and seeing how they've dealt with every possible scenario you can imagine. So today, when we talk about pitch decks, we'll tell you how we build pitch decks. But I think what's most important is we're going to tell you how thousands of other successful founders have done it and kind of bring that knowledge to you.
And not only that, we're going to be talking to you about how things have changed, because we are basically in the third sort of major bubble in terms of .com. It's the AI things going around. I was around during .com 1.0. That's where you cut your teeth. So we'll be able to contextualize it. Look forward to sharing. Once again, everyone, make sure, load up your questions. You can't ask enough questions. We're here to talk for you, about you, and help you out as much as possible. Will, here's a founder. And we're going to be talking and going to be asking, does a unicorn? We want to get through understanding this business first and then talk about the potential here. Right away, cover page, the first impression, big businesses supporting small businesses, new patented business process opportunity, business card junction. What do you think?
Well, for what it's worth, it says big businesses supporting small businesses twice, which is odd. We wouldn't want to say that more than once. But big businesses supporting small businesses also doesn't tell me anything. We don't want to use the cover image or the cover slide as a way to promote a tagline. We want to be informative on this slide. And one of the things people never think about when they build this slide, they always think it as the placeholder slide to the actual deck. It's the only slide that will get seen by 100% of people. So we want to make sure what we put on here is really, really specific. The name of the company, exactly what it does, just in simple terms, and likely some contact information.
And just a quick shout out, we have Aria joining us in the audience. Not going to call you out, don't worry, Aria, but lovely founder, very delightful. Enjoyed meeting you. I already did your pitch deck review and recorded it, so you're going to have a different video for you to follow. We're going to focus on this one here, just in case. And for those of you who, if you want your pitch deck review, just send it to us. And then we got to do a little bit of a release and everything. We're happy to talk. I literally say this, you're going to get like $1 million worth of consulting in an hour when Will and I talk about this. Yeah. So we want to do this for you. So cover slide, use this as an opportunity, best practice, just do a little tagline or something that describe what your business does and make it simple and try to be clear, not clever. And, you know, use this as first impression. Here's the problem. Will companies spend $150 billion on sponsorship programs without the ability to collect B2B data with measurable results?
Okay. The challenge I have with this problem statement is that without the ability to collect B2B data with measurable results, I'm assuming that this product specifically collects B2B data for analysis. Because if you're going to say that the issue is collecting and analyzing B2B data around sponsorships, then the product has to be exactly that product. Ed, you know what the product is. Is it exactly that product?
It is not. That's where we've struggled with this statement. And I've gone back and forth with this founder, right, to try and figure out. So first, I'll tell you the feedback that I gave. Will, you can tell me if I'm on the right track or what you would add. First, I want to know how many companies I'm dealing with. So how many companies?
How many US companies?
Yes, exactly. How many US companies? And I get the fact they're spending $150 billion. You know, for me, it would have been better to say that they're something to the effect that their sponsorship programs aren't as effective because they can't track data and, you know, results, or they're misplacing their sponsorship dollars, because I know what this product is. But saying it as explicitly as this is, you're absolutely correct. It sets up the investor to say the solution needs to be something that you're going to collect B2B data.
Right. And again, I only partially know what the product is, and I'm 90% sure it's not that. And that concerns me. The second part of the challenge that I have with this is that, okay, so we've described what the issue is, and that's collecting B2B data with measurable results. What we haven't mentioned to kind of finish this thought or this sentence is, what's the consequence when that happens?
Yeah, that's good. Consequence.
We don't have a consequence here. And that's a bit of a challenge, because the consequence says this is why they have to stop doing it. Now, here's what I think, Ed. I think that likely the founders, they know the consequence, right? So in their minds, they're like, well, of course, it's this. And it's like, hey, that's cool. You forgot to tell your audience.
I'm keeping my cards close to the vest, because there's actually a problem statement that I personally would use, but I want to back into it. So let's see if we can get some logical flow.
Keep going.
Let's talk about the solution. So Business Card Junction allows large businesses to target and sponsor small businesses by paying for their business cards and completely tracking sponsorship results.
I'm not sure how that relates to the problem statement exactly.
It doesn't.
Okay, fair. Yeah. It happens all the time, right? When we're reviewing these decks, folks, just, you know, for folks that are listening to this for the first time, folks that are in the audience now, our job between Ed and I, this isn't Shark Tank. We're not trying to like create theater for us to rip apart your idea. Our job is to help you. So when I look at a problem with the deck, my first thought is like, how do I make this founder feel bad? It's how do I get on the same side of the table and fix this deck? So when I'm saying, hey, I don't see it connect, okay, that's my job. It's Ed's job to help fix that problem. So with that said, Ed, how did we get from $150 billion worth of sponsorships to business cards?
Okay. And now you're perfect segue and setting me up for what I wanted to see.
Okay.
So the problem, and let's work this out, because we want to eventually answer, does this unicorn, right? So the problem is that companies are trying to do PR. They're trying to reach different demographics and all this stuff. And so one of the avenues is sponsorship, right?
Yeah.
But then they sponsor like teams and they put their logos on stadiums and they do, races and et cetera. The problem is the real problem is that companies are looking for opportunities to market themselves, develop PR, have a relationship with the market in that way.
Okay, back up. Hold on, Ed. Let me make sure I triangulate this from you, rather. So does a large sponsor, let's say it's Wells Fargo, does a large sponsor want to influence the small business or the small business's customers primarily?
Small business customers. They want to get to the customers that'll eventually bank at Wells Fargo.
Okay. That's a totally different problem.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is they're trying to reach a specific customer archetype, and they don't have a viable way to do it through local small businesses.
Well, what we're proposing is that is a channel. So big companies use sponsorship as a channel. So they go, the Little League company says, hey, sponsor our uniforms. And the company wants to sponsor the Little League uniform because so-and-so sitting in the audience or that Little League player's father could be a potential customer for Wells Fargo. This is how I understand it, right?
Okay. So, but we got to triangulate that a lot more.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to talk about a specific sponsorship goal. Because if we just zoom out and say $150 billion in sponsorships, I mean, people are sponsoring all kinds of things for all kinds of reasons. And I have a hard time believing that all of that would funnel into business card sponsorships.
Well, now you could make an argument. I'd be interested in your thought on this. And this is getting to that, does a unicorn conversation, that the impact of not having proper sponsorship programs or anything like that is $150 billion without any real ROI or an understanding of what that ROI is. Because I know for a fact that companies have no idea. They just throw like some sponsorship money into a kitty and they say, all right, let's sponsor this and make it happen.
Okay, so like a part of it, we could say it's local goodwill. We could say it's industry goodwill. In other words, it's targeted in some way. There's some reason we believe that being on the back of a business card achieves a goal. What we need to do in that problem statement is explain what that goal was.
Yeah.
See, we can't say a business card is a good use case for sponsorship if we don't understand why they want to use that as a mechanism to begin with.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Help me out. Okay. And by the way, before we continue, I love this. I'm just going to let the audience know, because when I work with a founder, for those of you who are in the audience, I'm working with you. I'm so close to the deck that I can't see the forest through the trees often. So what I use Will, and I bounce things off of him as a completely unbiased third party. He comes in cold, and then I get feedback, full length mirror, on how I can help the founder as well.
You bet.
So
you bet.
What we're trying to do is we're not saying anything about this business other than we want to try and figure out how to communicate this. And I'm using Will as my sounding board to figure that out. But Will, here's my question to you. So let's just take the solution in terms of what this company does. So if I told you that my startup, Business Card Junction, I let big businesses sponsor the business cards of small businesses, and I allow you to track that sponsorship opportunity. Does this make sense? What would you say to this solution statement?
I'm having a really hard time connecting being on the back of a business card to tracking sponsorship results. I don't see the connection there at all. If anything, I picture being on the back of a business card to be one of the most non-trackable things you could do.
Okay, great. Now, but you did understand that this is what this startup does, backup business cards, etc.
At a high level, yes, but I'm still confused.
Okay.
Now, that said, there's something here around sponsoring the business card as an incentive mechanism, but we never really talked about that in the problem, right? So we probably need to touch on that somewhere. Let's get further into the deck. I want to see how some of the slides start to tie together.
Here's the market analysis slide.
All right, so I see the TAM. I'm going to go down to SOM for a second. 250 million a year, averaging 50,000 sponsor. Okay, now what's interesting about this is already jumping me into getting a massive share of this sponsorship model without really having me understand at all where else the money is going or what we're going to be taking from, so to speak. I'm making this up. But Ed, let's for a second say that of the $150 billion, $10 billion goes to sponsoring Little League teams. I know it doesn't, right? We'd have to understand, if we're going to talk about a TAM, which part of that market we're going to pull from.
Yeah.
Because if people are otherwise sponsoring Little League teams or the sponsorships are going to things that we have no influence on whatsoever, can't be part of our TAM.
Let me reverse this and share another way that we could potentially look at it. And this is the reason I asked for how many businesses. Okay. So let's say, just for shits and giggles to keep this clean, 1 million businesses, okay, use sponsorship as an avenue. All right. So that would be your total TAM. Like 1 million businesses have sponsorship programs. Or we could say I don't know, 10 million businesses could have sponsorship programs. Now you're talking about a really big TAM.
You bet. You bet.
And we're going to target the million businesses that do use sponsorships. And we're presenting this opportunity to sponsor business cards versus the Little League team. How would that work for you?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We still haven't set up why this mechanism solves a problem. Nothing about what we just said has any indication of why it's trackable. And nothing that we just said has any indication why this is better. Why being on the back of a business card is better than being on the back of a Little League jersey.
Okay.
So I think there's something interesting there. I want to go through more of the deck and see where that might present itself. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Now I'm going to let you know that we're still going to have gaps in this, right?
Okay,
but I do know,
that's what we're here for.
And I encourage, we have the founder in the audience. I don't want to call anybody out or anything like that, but hey, founder in the audience, if you want to type a message to us and help us understand and pick this apart, we're here to help and work with you. Let's look at how it works. So sponsors, I got sponsorship money. I'm going to deposit $500,000 to $100,000. Small businesses each pick a sponsor of their choice. So I'm Wells Fargo. They can say, hey, I want you to sponsor my business card. And then the sponsor receives a notice, information about the company, and chooses to sponsor them or not. I say, yeah, I'm going to sponsor Will's pesticide, and pest control company says, print my business card. I say, yay, yes. And that's how it works, slide.
Well, that's how it gets started, but that's not really how it works.
Right.
Because what we said was the core of the problem was that they couldn't track their performance. So none of that how it works tells me how they tracked anything.
Exactly. It's the beginning, but just want to reiterate, if you're making the problem is it's not tracking, and then you're making the we can track, and you don't explain how you track, then your how it works slide leaves the investor wanting. Like it's
you bet. Now let's pause there for a second, Ed, because structurally, for all the other folks listening, kind of thinking about their own decks, we spend the most amount of time talking about the problem slide every time. It's also the hardest slide. But the reason we spend so much time initially just talking about the problem slide is because it's the North Star for the entire rest of the deck. The problem slide is basically how every slide, how it works, competition, etc., are all going to map back. In other words, how it works has to say, okay, when I use this, did it solve the problem? When we get to competition side, hey, are we better than our competition because we solved the problem better? The problem is the most important part of the deck. So when we set that up well, everything else will map back to it.
In other words, it's the cornerstone and it affects everything else. It's the seed. You bet. Everything goes there. And that's the reason we torture these problem statements to death. And founders are, Will, here's what happens. Founders go, but I just want to talk about my solution, right? They just say, but I built this cool solution. Let's get to the solution. And that's not the way investors look at it. Explain, Will, how do investors look at it? Why are investors so interested in understanding the problem first?
You got to understand the problem first, because if anyone, actually everybody that's listening right now, if you didn't understand the problem, the rest of the deck makes no sense. It's when a movie opens up and you have no idea what the premise is, and you're watching going, what is going on here? It's the equivalent of missing the first half hour of a movie and trying to figure it out as you go. It's frustrating as hell. And investors don't have that much patience. They have no incentive to sit in the movie. So we have to make sure within 30 seconds, they understand exactly what the problem is and why it's so painful and it's so big and it has to be solved.
And based on that, they start going, I can make a lot of money if I invest in this startup.
You bet,
right?
You bet. So got to nail it.
Now, here's where I am just going to be very transparent. I experienced cognitive dissonance with this startup here because here's what happens. This is another how it works slide, but it occurs to me the way that we're tracking sponsorship is not based upon the cards going out. It's based on how many people come to the site and they look to have their cards sponsored. That's where I get confused. You see what's going on here, Will?
I don't. And the reason I don't see what's going on here is because I don't have a single sentence at the top that summarizes exactly what you want me to take away. A single sentence would, and I'm not saying this is what you want me to take away. A single sentence would say, sponsored companies come to the site, they report on a regular basis, which helps us drive our analytics data. And then the data and the categories would be below it. This happens a lot where we present information, and because we as the founders who build these decks, we have context for what all this stuff means, but somebody seeing it for the first time has no idea.
Let's keep going. And I want to just get through this and then talk about how we can adjust it and give this founder advice. So summary of the patent, I'm not going to read this whole thing. What are your thoughts on adding a patent summary in terms of sort of the how it works or here's our special sauce?
Okay. The key with a patent or presenting something like this, which frankly doesn't happen a lot in our world. You would think in the startup world it happens all the time. It's actually fairly rare. But the key with the patent isn't just saying what the patent is. It's explaining why it's specifically defensible. The most important part of any patent isn't getting the patent, it's defending the patent. And so, I've got some friends who live in the patent world, and they'll all tell you the same thing. You can have any patent you want, but if you can't defend it, it's as good as not having it at all. So what you want to talk about is not just the content of the patent, but you want to say, we can be defensible for this particular thing and call it out right at the top of it. So that's exactly what the audience will focus on.
And a patent is typically has to be based on a unique insight. And that's what investors want to see. What do you know that other people don't know, and how are you patenting it?
Yep.
And just a few notes here on this is nobody's going to read this whole wall of text, right? Investors aren't going to read this. So you have to be able to break this down. And on top of which, having an image with a puzzle piece that says summary is just pointless at this moment in time. We're just taking space and we're just distracting. So we need to break this down into what Will said. Headline at the top, our patent is defensible because of this, or something like that. And then let's just have a few bullet points and simplify this slide.
So again, at the top, just what you're saying, Ed, we have one summary sentence that says, we have a patent that defends our ability to print sponsored business cards that no one else can do. Again, to your point, we could have a couple bullet points that support that. But as the investor, I'm good at that point. I'm not going to dig into your patent right off of a pitch deck slide. I'm going to say, okay, I see what part you're defending, and move right along.
But Will, overall, let's step back and just give some good best practices for everybody who's here, because I see a lot of new founders, new faces joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us. But for you, if you do have a patent, or even if you don't, having a slide that explains how we're unique, defensible, that's okay to put in a pitch deck.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And patents are great. I'm not knocking them. We just have to frame the defensibility very specifically.
Yes, because so many times, Will, I'm sure you've seen this, people say, oh, we're patented. And we just know patents, some of them are not even worth a piece of paper. They're put on, like, you can really pretty much get a patent for everything. But what's in the patent, you have to explain that to investors.
You bet. And just when we say that, I don't need the ingredients of the patent. I need you to tell me, what part of that patent are you going to defend? We're going to defend the ability for people to be able to print sponsored business cards, right? Like, if that were it, I know it's not, but if that were it, that's what we're saying. And we can't just print the whole thing and say, you figure out what's defensible or why it matters. We never want to let people guess.
Okay, perfect. So then let's get to the business model. So once again, just so we don't keep repeating ourselves, Will, business model, you can basically take this slide, and let me just go through some aesthetics here. Take this, okay, and make it small. Like, you already have it small up here, so we don't even have to repeat this. And then have one big, robust headline that explains everything that you want, headline here, that the slide to slate, this is what you want the investor to take away from it, and then have your bullet points if you need them.
You bet. We've also got projections there. We plan to ramp up to 15,000 orders, et cetera. The projections go on the projection slide. The business model is specific to what's the mechanism that we make money, not how much money will we make. Just these are just the mechanics of how we make money. Let's build on that a little bit. We'll make money by connecting large businesses with small ones. That doesn't make any sense by itself. Okay, just hang tight. Large businesses support the small businesses by sponsoring their business cards. That's not really the business model per se. We've kind of already covered that in, say, the problem solution. The business model should be specific to, we get this percentage of all sponsored dollars that come through. The way we get that percentage is, or the mechanics of the average business orders is $75, and we make our 70% margin. We're missing the part of what percentage of all this money that comes through that we get.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, go for it.
We talked up to this point in time in how it works that companies deposit $5,000 to $50,000, and none of that is factored in here. We're talking about business card orders, et cetera. So really what I'm looking for is, out of that 5K to 50K or whatever it is, we charge a percentage of every sponsorship dollar, et cetera. And that's all you really need to say. You don't have to get into unit economics or anything like that. Just say, we charge 20% for every sponsored dollar. I don't know, something like that. That literally could be your big headline. And if you have other sources of revenue, that would be feasible.
My guess is the way this would work is, if a business were to sponsor $5,000, the business card junction gets the whole $5,000, of which we have 30% of costs, if you will, in order to deliver the cards to the business. We also really haven't talked up until now as to why this is valuable to the small business.
That's true.
At no point did we say this is why small businesses are going to go crazy about it. We can't say that it's because they get free business cards. Like that is a part of the strategy. It can't be the only strategy. There has to be some reason that I'm not just going to otherwise print my business cards. In other words, like, if you use any of the online printing houses now, you could easily say, hey, we're going to partner with those companies so that they can start using us to offer free business cards. Now that gets interesting, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, that's a partner strategy that allows people who would otherwise charge money, just like these guys do, because I know that they print business cards, we're going to create a free model, if you will, in the business card industry. And for high volume companies, this is going to be a big deal. See, that gets kind of interesting. Those are the kinds of things I'd want to talk about. But maybe that's go-to-market strategy.
Now, here's the really interesting, unique insight that this founder gave me. And this goes to domain expertise. And this answers the does it unicorn? Because for me, it's showing potential. This founder explained to me that the reason that companies like Vistaprint, Vistaprint, everybody does their business card. It's really a data harvesting machine. They don't care about the business card. They care about the businesses and the names and all the contact information on the business cards. And that actually is the value of their data. So just a little nugget there for you.
This is a complicated way to get a business address.
I know it's interesting, but you can think about it. It's verified. You get paid to print the business card, and then if someone sends you all their employees' business cards through there, like you've got all that information. Whether you can use it or not ethically, that's a whole other.
Yeah, that's my next question. I'm like, oh, you allowed to use that?
Whole other issue.
Let's keep going.
Go-to-market strategy. Step 1, plan to reach out. Step 2, video presentation. Step 3. Sign 1 of every 4 sponsors. Step 4, onboard 5,000 sponsors in 5 years.
Okay. This isn't really a go-to-market strategy. A go-to-market strategy would be more specific as to how we're going to directly reach out to 100,000 companies. In other words, they say via tested and proven methods. If I'm an investor, I need to know what those tested and proven methods are. I'm more concerned about how you're going to outmarket 1,000 other people who print business cards. And this is, again, where we might say our go-to-market strategy is to lead with free business cards. And so, if we're not the one printing them, although I understand that's part of this, we could work with other companies that could offer that as well. In other words, I would want to make free business cards a hallmark of my strategy. And I would want to make that very clear. Again, up until this point in the deck, we've yet to mention why free business cards is a big deal.
I want to double click on that. The reason I fully agree with what Will just said is because that is the strategic advantage of this startup. We have a startup with a history of patent and all the infrastructure of printing business cards. So if you can make that the cornerstone of your strategy and make it, Will, you said something just a moment ago about, hey, we're going to start making business cards a free thing. To me, that's a new model. That's a new way of doing things, because everybody's always trying to, charge for the business cards, et cetera. And hey, what if we just made business cards free for everybody, but we made a business model that made sense to support that model? So that's a
whole other approach, right? And I think we kind of buried the lead on the value of this business, because I think the value is taking something that historically people were spending billions of dollars on, in this case, business cards, and creating a whole new model where they're subsidized.
Yes.
I could see doing the same for domain names. By the way, I don't think business cards are the only mechanism. That seems wildly myopic. Now, to be fair, if our man prints business cards for a living, I get why he'd suggest that, right? I get it, right? But I think I might look at it more holistically and say, okay, what other collateral do small businesses need on a regular basis? And can we provide all of that? Why limit it to business cards?
Well, you just answered the question that we've been trying to get to, and you're thinking the same way I'm thinking, because that's what I saw. I saw, if we're answering, does it unicorn, a world where huge companies like Wells Fargo are supporting small business with all their needs and say, we have a website package, this and that, and all we want is a little space saying this was made possible, by support from Wells Fargo. Our business is made possible, and it becomes such a PR sort of thing. And all that digital stuff gets tracked, and now there's real partnership. That's a completely different way of getting these small businesses help and creating goodwill and spending your sponsorship dollars. I think that gets to a unicorn idea.
Yeah, I agree. Let
me just add one more thing to everyone watching, because I want to make sure this is relevant. The pendulum can swing one of two ways when it comes to go-to-market strategy, Will, and you've probably seen this a lot. On one side, all I see is a laundry list, and they just say go-to-market strategy, Facebook ads, Google ads, influencers, we're going to go viral. That's it. It's like, okay.
Yep.
And so there's no rhyme or reason. It's just a whole list of things. We're going to throw spaghetti up against the wall, see what sticks. But then I see things like this and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that don't explain. So they say what we're going to do, but not how we're going to do it. And so you want to be Goldilocks, and you want to have it right in the middle and say, we are going to do direct outreach using direct sales, and this is our lead magnet, or something like that. And this is what's worked for us. If you can do that. So combine the two and actually explain the strategy part, combining with the tactics, and that is a better go-to-market strategy slide.
For the first decade of my career, I ran one of the first interactive agencies throughout the 90s and beyond. And I got paid to make those slides. Because that was my job. You came to me as a major brand. Our clients were BMW, Best Buy, these big brands. And you came to me to say, Will, show me how to go to market in this new internet thing. And that go to market slide had to be highly specific. We couldn't just say go to internet, right? We had to say, right, we're going to build this website. We're going to run this campaign. We're going to have this tagline. We're going to use this frequency. It has to be highly specific. But here's what's most important. It's not that it has to be highly specific only. It has to be highly unique. Show me what you're doing on this slide that everyone else isn't doing. Ed, when you said a moment ago, you said, hey, everyone just says Facebook. What I always push back on the go-to-market slide is this. What on that slide can your competitors not do or won't do or aren't thinking? Whatever that is, that's your go-to-market strategy. All the other stuff is table stakes. Show me what's not table stakes.
Because, Will, investors, they are accounting for every single dollar. So if you just say, Google ads, I'm going to be thinking to myself, well, what's stopping you from putting 50 cents of every single one of my dollars into Google ads for a pointless thing, try and figure out. But if you told me we have a unique insight, a hack that other competitors haven't figured out.
That's it.
Here's the secret sauce. Yeah. That an investor will love you to death because there's development and there's distribution. And we worry as investors about how much our money is going into figuring out how you're going to distribute your product.
You bet. And look, in some cases, in many cases, a portion of your budget is going to go toward testing ideas to find out if they're worth putting more in. But you need to tell me why your idea of we're going to put that money, how you're going to test is also really clever, right? I mentioned earlier when we were doing this that, hey, making this up, we're going to partner with major business card vendors and we're going to make this available to them. Yes, we can do it as well, but we're also going to make it available to the Vistaprints of the world, et cetera, so they can all funnel their business through us. And we're going to use them as like an OEM distributor for this product and this platform because it goes beyond just us. That's unique. That's, oh, damn. Okay, now I can see why you could get a massive amount of distribution vis-a-vis their customers because you've built this platform to manage all the sponsorship dollars. But I don't see that here.
Let's workshop this for a second. So, Will, if this startup came up with a go-to-market strategy based on their competitive advantage because they've been printing business cards, they got all the infrastructure, another company can't say, oh, our go-to-market strategy is going to be business cards, but we can in this startup because it's already built in. That would qualify for you.
You bet. And look, again, I think, as we get further into this and we look at, how big this thing can be, I think we need to make the argument in this deck that business collateral for any startup, for any small business, is a significant expenditure that they would be highly incentivized to get rid of. I don't think of $70 as a big expenditure. Okay, so when we're talking about what the average order size was. Now, you could make the argument that, it's not just $70. It's $70 times a few employees. And then I'm going to push back and say, but most startups and small businesses don't have any employees yet. And so, we need to establish this basis that says for small businesses and startups, business cards are a significant and meaningful experience enough that we can drive a lot of that demand through this alternate channel.
One more slide, Will. I want you to look at one more slide, and then let's go back and see some recommendations.
Sure.
But I'm going to ask you ahead of time. We're going to do this a little different. When I tell you traction slide, Will, I'm going to present to you a traction slide, and you did this really well. Tell me what you're expecting to see as an investor, and then we'll see if this slide lines up. What do you need to see on a traction slide?
Okay, I need to see three things. First thing I need to see is what's the state of the product. Every product has a state from we just had the idea 9 seconds ago to this thing is launched and ready. I just need to know what the status is. After I understand what the product is, I need to know what kind of market validation you've done. Every product has market validation. From I just had the idea 9 seconds ago and I turned to my wife and we were watching Shark Tank and I said, what do you think of this idea? All the way to customers are currently buying the product. The third thing I need to see on every traction slide is your growth. What is it about this thing that's starting to take off a little bit? And when people say that, they immediately think sales. Sales are like the last thing you're going to have. Growth is the number of people that have been signing up to your email list that you've been using to get people excited about this. Growth are things like we've been ramping up our inventory or our staff, or there's a million things. Here's the cool thing about being a startup. Everything's growth because you start at zero.
Take a look at this slide then. So the three things that you said: state of product, have you talked to customers? What's the growth? What do you see in this slide?
Okay. The new business process patent, I get that. That is an element of traction. So I don't want to take that away. And so that has some value. The customer satisfaction, I'm not sure why that's traction. I can see that's value. Traction means there's something about this business that is accelerating at a rate that you need to get on board as an investor or you're about to miss it. So I don't get any FOMO, fear of missing out, from number 2. 25 years of company development. Again, that tells me you've been doing the same thing for a long time. I think that says fully developed websites and backend, robust API means you've built the product behind this, I think. But I wouldn't initially connect that to 25 years of company development. And then the last one with extensive experience with 20 million in business cards manufactured. Again, all this to me isn't traction per se. It's basically, hey, we're good at what we do. We have experience.
Which can be a component of traction if explained properly. But here's my problem with this, Will, is it doesn't really give me traction on this new business model,
Correct.
Right? This new way of doing things. If you would have told me, we've already talked to 10 sponsors that are on board, have committed, and we've already, designed and distributed 300 businesses of business cards, and we track this and we're growing. That's traction. This is more of a, hey, here's our team. Here's why we're amazing. It just supports it.
Yeah. Again, traction tells me why the train is leaving the station. It's that simple. Here's why, if you don't get on board soon, you're going to miss out on a huge opportunity. It has nothing to do with what we've done in the past. It has to do with what's happening right now. What are the trend lines that are taking off that are making you go, oh, damn, this thing's about to take off?
Okay. So let's wrap this up because there's more slides, but I think that we've identified some core fundamental problems that if the founder can figure it out. But I just want to validate right now. Let's talk about this. We've gotten to the point, and this is what I like about what we do, is sometimes, Will, we give founders ideas and we help them envision how big their business could really be. And a lot of times founders are like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it. I love the way that you're thinking about business. You're getting it, right? And so in this case, Will, you would validate that there is something in here about small businesses and the model of them spending on business cards, this and that, and then big businesses sponsoring those small businesses somehow to either share customers, goodwill, something like that, create a new model. To you, there's some teeth in that value proposition.
Okay, so I want to build on some building blocks that didn't get established here. First thing is we need to establish that these businesses who are sponsors, we need to segment which ones of these have a acquisition problem, so to speak. In other words, we mentioned Wells Fargo a bunch of times. I think the reason we mentioned Wells Fargo is because they clearly want small businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If I changed the sponsor and made it Disney, it wouldn't make that much sense. Okay? Great sponsor, phenomenal company. But I don't think I'd immediately make the connection as an investor as to why that specific sponsor thinks that sponsoring business cards is in its best interest. However, if I go across every vendor, big sponsor, that has a vested interest in small businesses, let's take Intuit, for example. They do TurboTax, they do Quicken, they do, basically a whole suite of small business products. Now, MailChimp, that would make sense. If I were to say B2B sponsors or small business sponsors spend $50 billion per year trying to attract formative small businesses, what we've done is we've picked 5 different pieces of collateral, the business card, the domain name, the website, et cetera, that are early ways for a Chase Bank or for a Wells Fargo to establish a goodwill relationship and collect data at the point of inception, which is exactly what Chase Bank did to me 30 years ago when I was walking around campus. And they were like, hey, do you want a t-shirt? And we'll sign you up for a Chase Bank card. And that's still my bank account today. I run we were talking about this the other day. I think I've run $100 million through that account because they gave me a goddamn t-shirt. I thought that was amazing. Best ROI of the t-shirt ever. But think of how much more specific and compelling that argument is, Ed, to say that, okay, I'm going to build on it further. The value of a relationship to Wells Fargo in the lifetime value of a small business, et cetera, is worth $22,000. Of course it's not, but I'm just making this up, right?
Sure. Yep.
Wells Fargo can buy that relationship, initially for $70.
Exactly.
Right? That's like, holy, whoa. We talk about this a lot at Startups.com. Ed, as you know, we've got 1.3 million companies on Startups.com. And what we often tell people is, yes, it's great that, we offer a service, et cetera, but we have a tremendous amount of influence around like a percentage of all small businesses in the US as to how they buy stuff, as to where they register domains or where they set up their email campaigns. And the value of Startups.com as a company isn't what we sell or the amount of revenue we make.
Exactly.
It's the amount of people that we have on this platform. It's massive. And then multiply that by how much they're going to spend with those critical decisions.
People who are on our platform, who trust us, and we've spent the time acquiring them as customers. That solves a huge problem. But let me push this a little further. Well, now we're getting into fun territory as advisors. So I began thinking about this in terms of this startup. So imagine, let's use your example like Disney for a moment. And let's say that I am a company that does makeup at parties. And if I could get Disney to sponsor my business card, the fact that Disney's paid for my business card means absolutely nothing to me. But if I can walk around and say, Disney has vetted me and Disney has sponsored me, and I've got Disney on the back of my business where I go into parties and put on fairy costumes and all that stuff, that's a different value proposition. It's similar to what you're talking about, connecting sponsorship opportunities to small businesses and extending out there. That to me is another argument that we could make as far as a value prop.
Yeah, listen, I think that ultimately it starts with, if the customers aren't interested in subsidizing their collateral purchases, being a business card, a domain name, et cetera, then the rest of the model doesn't hold up. If no one cares about buying business cards, then whether or not you can get Disney or Wells Fargo to sponsor them actually doesn't matter. But by the way, a lot of people get this confused, Ed. A lot of people are like, well, it's a two-sided marketplace. I need Wells Fargo and I need the small business. No, there's always one that comes before the other. In this case, if there's no demand, then it doesn't really matter if there's supply in the form of sponsorship dollars. But if you had a whole ton of people that were looking to get business cards, you could just sell them business cards. The value is still there, right? If you had a whole bunch of sponsors with nowhere to give their money, it's a useless business.
Well, this company, and I'm curious what you would think, because this company already has domain expertise. They've already shipped like $20 million worth of business cards, right? So how would they attach that and find that out with their market?
I think that the first thing as a proof of concept is I would have to have shown, and this is what would show up in the traction slide, that we've worked with sponsors who we have given our customers the option of paying for their business card or using a sponsored business card. And we found that 70% of people who, when given the option, opt for the sponsored business card. Because there's a part of this argument that we didn't talk about, which was, do people want a sponsor on the back of their business cards, right? And they may, that might be a huge thing, but I would talk about that in the traction. I would say, again, we've surveyed a number of people, et cetera, and this is a high demand item. You mentioned in the comments that free business cards is one of the top searched items. So when we get to our competitive slide, part of what I might look at there is, here are all my options to get a free business card. Why is this one better?
Yeah, because other people are onto this, right? This isn't something that's completely new. But I want to get back and double click on what you said, Will, is that we have to validate that people actually want this. And that's what investors are going to look at. I'm going to take for granted Keith has an amazing business. They're doing really good revenue. And I'd be happy with the business that Keith has any day of the week. Their determination, dedication, history, their experience, their expertise, great. But we are going into a whole new territory. We are going into startup land with startup investors, and they are going to scrutinize this at the level. So if you're talking about funding your small business and just helping you print more and better business cards, great. You've got all the goods. But if you want to put out something that's unique and disruptive and all the things that make a unicorn, we have to push this further in the way that, Will, you've been talking about today.
You bet. And if we're going to talk about, is this a unicorn, right? Does this have that option? Here's what I would say. Yes, if we can be very explicit as to how much value and quantify the value to the sponsor getting on the back of a business card or another piece of collateral is. If we can't make that argument. If we can't say, look, to Wells Fargo Bank, if they can get on the back of an entire stock of business cards for a local business, that's worth to them quantifiably $1,200, of which they only have to invest $70 to get to it. In that case, I don't even know that sponsorship is really a thing. That's just marketing dollars. If I've got ROI, and I can spend $70 to get $1,200 worth of value, I'm in. I don't have to worry about whether it's a friendly sponsorship that would have gone to a Little League, because at that point, I've created a strong incentive on behalf of these advertisers to point to that channel.
Here's how I look at it, Will. Does a unicorn? I break it down in, is there a huge market with small businesses? Yes. All right, huge market. Then I look at, is there a huge market in terms of sponsorship dollars being used and it not making sense? And I know big companies question their sponsorship packages all the time. So I know that there's this two-sided monster, but it's the how we bring them together and solve it that I'm still missing. And I think to what you said, if we could figure out how to bring everything together, then I think that we've got a winner here.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about being able to establish that relationship with a small business, I think in order for us to be able to say that this is a big opportunity, we have to quantify the value of that relationship. It's something that we talk about a lot at Startups.com, because indirectly we're kind of in the same work with small businesses, nothing to do with this model. But we look at it and we have huge sponsors that come to us. Like Lenovo is a huge title sponsor for us. Google was before that. And it's pretty obvious. They look at us and they said, you guys have all of our customers a year before they ever even think about looking for us. How can we partner with you to get in front of those customers in a meaningful way where we can give them some sort of big incentive or give in order for them to work with us? So we see this, we live this.
And we got a comment from the founder just talking about what's more valuable, being on the back of a business card or having a small business dead to a sponsor. The problem is we don't know. You have to go find that out from the market. You have to be able to explain, because we can pontificate with it all we want. But when you use the word indebted, what does that actually mean? Like, how is the value exchanged? How have you gone out to prove it? Like, you've created a thesis. Now go out and show the investors that you've explored that thesis and you've got meaningful data to back up your thesis. That's what we're talking about.
I think there's a great business here. I think the deck, and this happens all the time. So Keith, we're not picking on you. This is literally what we do. I think the deck needs a fresh face. I think we take the deck, we start from zero, and we say, look, we now that we understand what we're trying to accomplish, let's not try to torture the old deck, and we do this all the time. Let's do a fresh deck that starts with a fresh premise and see where that deck goes.
Here's one more thing that makes me bullish on this founder. Will, and I know you appreciate this, this founder, Keith, is out there and he is trying to prove this out with sponsors. I know he's got a sponsorship deck. He's going and talking to them. And if we can figure out how the sponsors say, yeah, take my money, take my 500 grand because you do this, this, and this, oh my goodness, we're off to the races.
100%. I love it. And again, Keith, I'm going to say this again. Thanks for sharing. Yes, we're trying to help you, but by virtue of you sharing, you're helping lots of other founders, some of those that are sitting on the show today, I mean, all the other people that will watch it in the future and people we point it to. So again, thank you for supporting us and sharing. I know it's hard to sit there and watch you guys rip apart your deck or, have all these opinions without being able to defend yourself, so to speak. So again, your patience has been awesome. Appreciate it a lot.
And Keith, to the founder, anybody who runs this gauntlet, you have our undying support and follow up. And I'm going to set you up with Will for more office hours and everything like that. So we've got this. We got your back. Thank you for doing this. To the audience, thank you so much for joining us. And we really appreciate it. And if you're, again, on the interwebs, check us out on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with each other, and let us critique your decks, give you some value of feedback. We do that every single Tuesday. Will, last word to you.
I want to say for folks that are new to the channel, etc., dig in and ask lots of questions. Use our comment threads to ask the questions that have been burning. We'll answer all of them. We never let a question go unanswered. So get active with us. We'll get active with you.
That's it for us this time. We'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.